New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Good morning. Good morning. Happy Saturday morning, or whatever time of day and whatever day of the week it is if you're watching this by recording. But for those of you who are hanging out with me live this morning, my name is Tracy Brown, and it is time for the Saturday morning Science of Mind conversation. Oh my goodness, I love this. I love getting up on Saturday and diving into a deeper understanding of what is in the Science of Mind textbook written by Ernest Holmes, the founder of Religious Science and now Centers for Spiritual Living. When he wrote the book, The Science of Mind, he was very clear that it is a faith, it is a philosophy, and it is a way of life. And so it's so important for us to be able to think about it in all three ways. And this month, we are going through the 4 introductory chapters that lay the foundation. And as Laura Topper shared a week ago, that if you read those 4 introductory chapters and read them over and over and over again, you don't really have to read the remaining 500 pages. That you will get the bulk, you will get the foundation upon which the Science of Mind is built. So we have been able to look at several of the chapters, and as we close out the month, we are going to dive into introductory chapter 3, what it does. So if you haven't, heard about chapter 1, 2, or 4, this may seem a little out of context, but that's okay. Just hang with me. Now, some of you are already putting in the chat who you are, where you're dialing in from, and I encourage you to do that. And I encourage you to post comments throughout this time. I'm so glad that you are with me live today. So what it does may sound a little strange. The chapter introductory section 1 is the thing itself. What is God? This concept of God, this structure of God. What is that? So the thing itself, the way it works, what it does, and how to use it. So I love that we saved this chapter for last, because you've already kind of heard how to use it and what it is, but it's really important that we dive into what it is doing while you are using it. So I'm going to approach this a little bit differently than normal. So let's see how this goes. There is a quote in this chapter that is this quote: We are surrounded by an infinite possibility. And this infinite possibility can pass into expression through us, but only as we consciously allow it to do so. So there's an infinite possibility. There are infinite possibilities, and we're surrounded by that, but it can only come into expression as we consciously allow it to do so. So when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about, for some reason, there's no explaining how the brain works, right? Not really. It just puts together things from your past and what you're doing right now. And so for some reason, the idea of fire came to mind for me. So just hang with me for a minute. This is not going to sound very theological, but it really does connect, at least at least in my mind. So we'll see if it makes any sense to you. So there are three elements required for fire, right? Like go back to your basic science courses or what you learned when you were a Boy Scout or a Girl Scout or in, scouting of some kind, right? A fire, in order for a fire to work, you've got to have oxygen, you've got to have a fuel of some kind, and it creates heat, or there's some heat element that all three of those together make fire, right? So the oxygen, it's always present. It's responsive to the environment it's in, and you can't see oxygen, but you know it's there, right? So that's oxygen. Let's look at fuel. The fuel that we use to burn a fire, start a fire, build a fire, grow a fire, the fuel has a defined purpose and a very clear use. We're using it to start that fire or to grow that fire bigger. And it clarifies the cause of what's happening. And the heat, it creates the combustion. The heat is what stimulates what is going on. The heat instigates what is happening. And because of that, you have these three elements that are working together. These three elements are working together. Now, I'm going to keep talking, but I am not seeing images on the screen. So I am hoping that you can hear me. If you can put in the chat, are you still hearing me? Please put in the chat that you are still hearing me. And I have this idea that when we go into this concept of fire and comparing that to what is true, that we can look at these three elements: oxygen, fuel, and heat. Oxygen, fuel, and heat. How does that apply to what we're talking about in terms of God or the universe and what it does? I think oxygen is like law, spiritual law. It does what it does. It's always present. It's invisible. It's always working in the background. It's subjective mind. It contains everything that there is to contain. And we don't know, we don't recognize it until there's some other things that happen. So I think the heat, right, the heat that drives that is our loyalty to spirituality, our loyalty to life, our loyalty to creating the best out of whatever there is. Our faith, our application of our principles and what we know, our belief, right? That's loyalty. Our loyalty to life is the instigator for what manifests. And our love is that, it's the catalyst. It's like the match to it's the match that we use to light the flame and start the fire. So again, if you think about it, right, the oxygen is responsive to the environment. It's invisible. It's always there. That's like the law. The fuel clarifies everything. It has a defined purpose, and it's the match that lights the flame. But what was the catalyst? What created the combustion? What stimulates the fire of our experiencing the life we love is the belief, the loyalty, I'm calling it, but the belief and the faith that there is a power for good in the universe. It is available to all, and I can use it. As if I'm loyal to that belief and I'm living my life in a way, then that manifests that or that demonstrates that, then my love for life and my love for my own expression becomes the fuel. So, like I said, just hang with me a little bit, because normally we talk about what it does and we read all these heady quotes and we think about it and think about it, but I really want to relate it to something that is tangible. And I hope that this does that, because we know, right? You've got to have a heat source if you want to have fire. You can't have fire if you don't have some source that is lighting the flame. You got to have that. And you must be intentional if you want to have a life you love. So your intentions are what then light the flame in your life. Now, in this chapter, Ernest Holmes really does a good job of reminding us that love and law are always working. Love and law are always working. Love and law are always working. So what is the factor that makes the difference? It's that piece that is the intentions you set, the beliefs you have. So what kind of fire are you lighting in your life? What are your intentions? What are the decisions that you are making about who you are, how you are, what you're going to do, what you want to achieve? What are the beliefs? And are you training yourself to think in a way that would create the kind of loyalty that would combine or ignite love and law to create the fire in your life in the way that you would like it to be? Right? So the sources of the heat, and when we apply the concept of fire and what we know about it scientifically from research, it's always going to have those three elements: oxygen, heat, and fuel. To create a fire in the life that we have, in the life that we lead, you're going to have law and love ignited by your loyalty to the intentions, decisions, and trained thought. So I was in a conversation yesterday, and two people I care about very much were comparing how many days in a row they had completed meditation, and both the challenge of that, the challenge of going, 30 days, 40 days, 80 days, 100 days, 200 days in a row is a great example of, am I being loyal to my intention to live my life in a certain way so that I am understanding, and more than that, embodying the spiritual principles that will, and practices that will allow me to have the flame of my life be exactly what I want it to be and more. And I thought, wow, that's exactly what we teach when we teach. And when Ernest Holmes wrote, trained thought is better than untrained thought. And it's up to us to train our thoughts to support the action. So, in this chapter, what it does, what is happening, what is it? Ernest Holmes, the first sentence in the chapter, basically says this: we should approach the study of this science rationally, never expecting to derive any benefits from it that its principle does not contain. For while it is true that we are immersed in an infinite intelligence, a mind that knows all things, it is also true that this intelligence can acquaint us with its ideas only as we are able and willing to receive them. And the quote that I started with 15 minutes ago: the divine mind is infinite. It contains all knowledge and wisdom, but before it can reveal its secrets, it must have an outlet. This outlet shall be compelled to supply through our own receptive mentalities. What we draw from it, we must draw through the channel of our own minds. And I would add our own minds and practices. Trained thought is way more powerful. And we are the only ones who can train our thoughts. It's you and me. We can't blame anybody else. Trained thought is far more powerful than untrained thought. So, what it does when we talk about spiritual principle being applied into our lives, it is operating based on the molds that we set up in our own minds. And that's what this chapter tells us in 18 different ways. The molds are made in our own subjective minds through conscious and specific thought, specific purpose, specific direction. So if I want to have 365 days in a row when I meditate, I am the only one who can make that happen. And through my choice, my thought, my purpose of doing that, and my direction, I am building my faith. I am deepening my spiritual connection. I am reinforcing my own commitment to be in alignment with spiritual law and the love of universe, the love that is the basis of all creation. Love and law never change. They're always present, but how much of that we access is based completely on how we tap into it, what we believe about it, how we tap into it, and how we embody it. So if you are, let me do a couple of things. So I'm seeing lots of comments in the chat, and it's like, right, Wayne, holy in the flow. Yes, we have to be holy in the flow, or when we're not, get back into alignment with that so that it is not both around us, surrounding us, but it is within us as well. And all of these comments, right? Oh, I love this. Commitment must be exciting, thus a welcome fire. Isn't that great? Like, commitment must be exciting, thus a welcome fire. If it's exciting to us to be committed to the intention we have and to the spiritual beliefs that we have, then absolutely it begins to be a fire that we welcome. And I love that. It just makes me stop and think for a minute, because I use the metaphor of the fire and how what it scientifically needs in order to burn. And some people might immediately go to, well, fire is bad and a big fire burns things up and a fire is destructive. But I think of the fire as warmth. I think of the fire as growing and having a purpose and the excitement of life. So I really, really love that comment. And, even when a fire is destructive, in this context, I want the fire to burn up anything that is not going to give me a positive result. I wanted to burn up and eliminate and turn to ash my bad habits and my decisions and actions that don't bring me positive results, but not just burn them up and leave the ashes, but then warm and cook we use fire to cook, and I wanted to cook that which nourishes me, that which feeds me, that which serves me well. So let's look at the chapter. If you do have access to the book, the chapter, what it does, begins on page 40 and goes through page 50. So obviously I'm not going to read 10 pages of content, but I'm going to kind of go through some of the headings to give you an idea of all of the depth that's in this chapter and give you some highlights from each of those headings. So as I do that, if you have an example that comes to mind, drop it in the chat. If you have a question that comes to mind, you can put that in the chat as well. So as Ernest Holmes introduces the chapter, it doesn't have a separate subhead, but every time I open my book to this page, I see that I have underlined in or highlighted in 3 different colors or ways this sentence, which I've already shared with you. What we must draw from it, we must draw through the channel of our own minds. And so everything else in this chapter begins to build to remind us what Spirit is doing is it is gifting us with the life we want and the experiences we need based on and through distributed through the channel of our own minds. This is why science of mind does not believe in, God as a superhuman living up in the sky, in the clouds, and deciding whether we're good or bad, and all of that, right? Because we are accessing the infinite possibility through the channel of our minds, and we are the ones who are setting our intentions and choosing who we want to be, how we want to be in the world. The next section is the universe impersonal. And oh my goodness, in classes, so many people have confusion about this. Ernest Holmes writes, the universe is impersonal. It gives a like to all. It is no respecter of persons. It values each alike. Its nature is to impart. Our nature is to receive. So it doesn't mean impersonal like aloof. It doesn't mean impersonal like I don't care about you. You mean nothing to me. It means that it is consistent. Universal spiritual law is consistent. Just like, the example we use so often, if I am holding this pen and I let go of it. I'm no longer holding it right here in the air. When I totally let go of it, there is a physical law in the universe called gravity, and you know what is going to happen. And it doesn't matter if I am holding the pen and let go of it, or if Wayne is holding the pen and letting go of it, or if John or Susie or Rafe or Raymond, it doesn't matter who's holding the pen and lets go of it. The law of gravity simply does what it does. And it doesn't care who is using it. It doesn't care if it's a pin that I just dropped on the floor or let go of and gravity pulled it to the floor, or whether it is this USB drive, or whether it is my emergency, or whatever I'm holding. The law of gravity is impersonal. It is working always. And I am the one who learns that it is important for me, if I don't want my pen on the floor, that I hold it, I use it. Have learned to use it. That's all Ernest Holmes means when he says the universe is impersonal. It will work the same for me as it does for Laura Topper. It will work the same for Laura Topper as it works for Reverend Elzia. It's going to work the same in Reverend Elzia's life as it does with Reverend Mark Gilbert. So it is impersonal. Next section, a riddle of simplicity. I remember the first time I read this, I was like, wait, it's simple. How can it be a riddle? That doesn't make sense to me. But as I read it, it made perfect sense. I'll read you a couple of sentences. The first sentence in this section is, it is a beautiful and true thought to realize that every person stands in the shadow of a mighty mind, a pure intelligence, and a divine givingness. Right? Like every person is a part of this same mind, the same intelligence, and is the product of divine givingness. And then lower in the next chapter, Ernest Holmes writes, the intelligence by and through which we perceive that there is a spiritual presence and an infinite mind in the universe constitutes our receptivity to it and decides its flow through us. So how much of this universe, how much of what is available to us, again, he makes the point, what it does is it makes everything available. And what we experience is what we can conceive and our receptivity to it. On the next page, he says, to return to a sane simplicity is one of the first and most important things to do. It is the nature of the universe to give us what we are able to take. It cannot give us more because it has given all. It's all available to us, but we will only receive that which we are ready to receive, that which we believe, that which we can imagine. There's a lot of W's in there. So we are limited by our belief. The universe is not limited. And then at the end of this section, he says, the laws of the universe are to be trusted, but we must come to understand them before we can use them. And for me, I remember reading this a few years ago and going, this is the difference between blind faith and deep faith. Blind faith of, oh, I know it's going to happen, I know, but because I really understand it and how it works and what it is doing, then I can use it. It's not out there. It's not vague. It's not just a concept in my mind. It becomes a tool for me when I really understand universal spiritual principle. The next section in this chapter is Love Rules Through Law. If you are looking or following along in your book or want to refer to the Science of Mind textbook, it's on page 43, this section, Love Rules Through Law. They work together. They're both happening all at the same time. And Ernest Holmes clarifies for us, love is the divine givingness and law is the way. Okay? Love is the divine givingness. Love is spontaneous. It is responding. It is receptive to what you are asking for. And law is the way. Law is impersonal. Law is the gravity. It is going to deliver. And so it is going to deliver on what it is that you commit to in your minds, in your thoughts, in your actions. So both in your belief and in your behavior, you've got to commit both in order to truly be in alignment and tap into the infinite nature of the love that wants to give and the law that is the method through which it gives. The next section is the scientific method, and Ernest Holmes goes into a lot of detail about the method. And the highlight from that section is this: since an understanding of any law must pass first through our own consciousness before we can make use of it, it follows that with all our getting, we must get understanding. Now, if you've ever studied the Bible, you know that there are passages or scriptures in the Bible that basically say the same thing. Get ye understanding, because it's not magic. It's not really a miracle. This is the way spiritual law works. Hey, if I know that, let me arrange my life in alignment with that so I am able to move mountains. What seem to appear in the human mind to be mountains, but I'm in alignment with spiritual law, and love and law are always working and they are always conspiring for my good. So I become what makes the difference. Okay, there are a few more sections in here, and I want to just highlight them in case they really help you understand this a little bit more deeply. Because as Donna is saying in the chat, we have to raise our own vibration in order for the universe to give us what we want. That's what Ernest Holmes is saying, but he's saying it like in 6 different ways so that we don't miss it. So in the next section, he reminds us that the universe contains all knowledge. The first sentence on page 44 near the bottom. The universal mind contains all knowledge. It is the potential ultimate of all things. It is the potential ultimate of all things. Should all the wisdom of the universe be poured over me, I should yet receive only that which I am ready to understand. Like, it's all right here, but I don't see it or I don't understand it, so I don't access it, which means I can't receive it. And I can blame the world. I can blame people. I can blame life. It's so hard. When really, much of the time, not 100%, but much of the time, it's simply that I am getting what I am believing. I'm believing the world is hard and people are against me. And so I get that. Or I'm believing that life is hard and I'll never be able to pay all my bills ever because debt is just the way it is. And the universe actually is working and giving me that experience in some way. And again, please let me remind you, 2.5 minutes ago, I said much of the time or most of the time, because I want to do that caveat, we don't create every experience of our lives. What we have control over is how we respond to experiences, and some hardships, some joys. Some of the things we experience are the result of cultural or collective consciousness, or we are playing a role in someone else's experience. But for the majority of our lives and our overall sense of our lives, we are able to influence it. And a lot of that is, what do we believe is possible and what do we believe we can receive. So the universe contains all knowledge, but it can only give us that which we understand. There are, oh my goodness, there are like 8 other sections. So let me just give you shorter highlights. Mental work is definite. This is what Emerson meant when he said the unity passes into variety. So our mental work is definite. It's always leading to a specific outcome. I think of it sometimes as living in answered prayer, that my mental work is definite. I am praying about what it is I want to experience, and I'm very clear about that. And in doing that, the next section is the principle restated. And Ernest Holmes just captures those previous 4 pages with this. We are surrounded by an infinite possibility. It is goodness, life, law, and reason. It can pass into expression through us only as we consciously allow it to do so. How many times is he going to say that? As many times as it takes for us to actually take it in and believe it and live based on that. So the remainder of this chapter on what it does is all about how we then understand it in our own lives and how we use spiritual mind treatment, and that we are treating a false belief or a false faith, a misplaced faith, with specific action, specific behaviors, specific imaging of what it is we want. And this is where Ernest Holmes first introduces spiritual mind treatment. And if you're not familiar with that as a form of affirmative prayer, this is the chapter that you want to go to understand what we're talking about. A spiritual mind treatment or mental treatment is dealing with, on page 48, dealing with the subtle energy of spirit, but the molds are made in our own subjective mind. And we should be very careful not to think, because we make the mold, that we must create the substance. That is one of the most powerful sentences, I think, in this book. We are responsible for identifying the mold, the shape, the what, and then we co-create with spirit, filling the mold. Spirit can create the how much better than we can. And so in treatment, in mental treatment, we are defining the mold and how we would know that the mold had been fulfilled. And so we are describing the what, and then we are claiming it without any doubt and with full commitment, which is why on page 49, Ernest Holmes has the next section titled Hope, a Subtle Illusion. Not first sentence, but in the first paragraph. Hope is good. In the second paragraph, hope is good. It is better than despair, but it is a subtle illusion. It is an unconscious compromise and has no part in effective mental treatment. Hope is better than despair, but it is a subtle illusion. Because if we say, I am doing a mental treatment, I believe this in this, and I know this is what I want, and this is where we're going, and this is the outcome, and then we say, I sure hope it happens, then we didn't really have faith. We're not really using the power in the way that we can. And so I want to just go back for a minute and give you maybe 4 things to think about in our remaining time. We already know that it is really important. It is really important for us to get clear about what we want. And in these 4 introductory chapters, Ernest Holmes is reminding us that it is up to us to co-create, and that everything that happens has to happen through us. Okay, it's not, life is not happening to us, it is happening through us. So, one of the things I want to remind myself and you too, what it does, what spirit does, what universal spiritual principles, what it does, it works for us, through us, as us, according to our own thoughts and beliefs. So our intentions, our thoughts, and our beliefs are the heat, because love and law never change, right? So I want to challenge you as you go through this coming week to read this chapter if you have the Science of Mind book, and to bring on the heat. You are in control of the heat that gets applied. If a fire needs oxygen, heat, and fuel, law and love are the oxygen and the fuel, but you are responsible for the heat. So your loyalty to yourself, your loyalty to receiving more, your loyalty is, and your action and your embodiment is the heat that makes your life be a flame of destruction or a flame of creation. What is it that you are thinking and intending? Ernest Holmes ends this chapter with something I used to have on my bathroom mirror for probably about 4 years, because I needed the reminder every day. And I'm hoping that you will use this reminder in the coming week. How much of this infinite good is ours? All of it. All of it is available to you. All of it. Okay? I'm making it bigger because I want you to take it in. How there is infinite good in the universe. How much of this infinite good is ours? In fact, change it. Change it to the first person. How much of this infinite good in the universe is mine? All of it. As much of it as I can embody. That is what this chapter is all about. That's it in a nutshell. And so now I'm really jazzed, and I'm remembering how much I love this chapter, and I could go on another 10 or 15 minutes about it and pull out a couple more quotes, but I'm not going to do that. I'm loving your comments in the stream, and that you're engaging with the topic. Thank you, Raspoti King, for your comments all throughout. I'm just going to go back and read them later, and Donna and Wayne. And as all of us take this into the coming week, let's remember that we are the heat to the fire, and that we can create a life that is destructive or constructive. It really is up to us. And what Spirit is doing is giving us the option to choose. If there's one thing that you will remember or that you're going to walk away with, and you can think of that now, I encourage you to drop that into the chat as well. What's the one thing to remember? I know for me, the one thing that I go back to over and over again is hope is a subtle illusion, and that I actually have the power to tap into love and law that are always present by what I intend. And that for me sharpens my saw or builds my faith. And for you, I just am curious, what is it that you remember? Is it that you must embody it if you want to receive it? Or I love that Raspoti King says, yeah, remembering it's all mine. The infinite universe is present, 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 and just waiting for us to tap into it. Here's what's so good about that as I close out today. We have the New Thought Media Network that allows us to tap into it all day long, every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's programming, there are affirmations, there's the wisdom shared through many, many different presenters. There's prayer, there are prayers throughout the day, an opportunity to request prayer. And of course, there is this Saturday morning conversation about science of mind principles from the team of us that have committed to dive into that with you. If you are getting benefit from the science of mind and from the principles, unity, new thought, science of mind, divine science, UFBL, or any independent center, as it comes through the network, then I invite you to contribute to the network. Your donation is what makes all of this possible. Your donation of money, your donation of time being a part of this show and others, your donation of generosity in the form of sharing links to today's program and other programs on your social media feeds. Your generosity is what drives this. If you can make a financial donation, then please go to ntmedia.org and click on donate and join me in financially supporting this network. And I think that's all the time that we have. We try to keep it to 45 or 50 minutes. I am so delighted to be a part of this team and to be walking with you through the Science of Mind textbook. I know yours doesn't look like this, but isn't my book cover really cool? Yes. And we will be with you next week, starting into a new chapter. And I think that's it. So have a great rest of the day, wherever you are and whatever you do. My name is Tracy Brown. Bye for now.
Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, for your continued support. Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown Atlanta, for your monthly contribution. Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, for your monthly contribution. And please help us welcome Om Center for Spiritual Living in La Mesa, California. Thank you for your monthly donation. Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, for your most generous donation. And a special thanks to Heckerland Foundation for your generous technology grant. And Suze Odgen, thank you for your very generous donation. And a big shout out to all our committed donors.
There's one power invisible, and you see it everywhere and every day. One power